Rehana Hashmi, thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't we start off with a little bit about you? Your story is very much interwoven in the history of Pakistan.
Yes.
And so why don't we start there and talk a little bit about your childhood and what kind of role models you had as a child?
Thank you. I start with my childhood. I don't remember my first 5 years, but after that, I was, I think, in grade 3 or grade 4. It was 67 when there was the first martial law in Pakistan. And Ayub Khan was martial administrator at that time. And my father was leading protests, and he was going to prison, jails, off and on. And I was the one, I was second in my siblings. At that time, I was only I was 7 or 8 when my mother was asking me to go and take care of my father's store. He lost his job because of these all protests. And I was the one who was going to store to look after that because we have to feed hungry mouths. So then when the store had to be open early morning when the kids were going to school. And when the kids were going to school, and I was hiding myself behind that shelf, this counter where the money was to put, because I didn't want it to my friend to see me that I'm not going to school and I am running this store. So the next, when my father was coming back and a teacher was asking me why you were not school, I was telling I was sick. And my students, no, she was not sick. And she was running her father's store and they were all laughing. So that was where the others, my class fellows were playing with Barbies, playing with dolls. I haven't had that chance because I was the one who was looking after very often to look after that store.
So you had a lot of responsibilities very early on in life, but because your father was politically engaged and
Yes.
was bearing the brunt of the regime at that time.
Yes, and that was a very small town in province of Baluchistan. Audience will see this intro about where Pakistan is. Pakistan is bordering Iran, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, China, and India on the larger. So I was born in a small town of Mastung, which is bordering Baluchistan, bordering Irani Baluchistan. So I was running, but I learned a lot also. I was a good financial manager. Yeah. So I was counting money. So I was good financial manager at the age of 7, 8. So that was hard times. At that time, the political movement was going on. And because of that, my father had to leave that province. And we left to other provinces, which is bordering Afghanistan. So we came to that city, Dera Ismail Khan. And my father left politics, but he sowed that seed in me. But when we came back, because when he was going to prison, I was the one who was taking care of all home. But when he came out and we shifted and he wanted me to be at home, not to go out. But that was already maybe my mother saw that leadership in me, and I was the one who was going out. And all of a sudden, when we changed the city, and he was saying to stay home, that was very hard for me. So I was trying to do my activism in school. Mm-hmm. So standing for rights of the students and challenging teachers when they were punishing, corporal punishment. So I was the one doing my activism in school.
Yeah. I'm thinking about your life and how it was interwoven with these different moments in Pakistani history. You were 13 when Bhutto is made prime minister.
Yes.
You were 17 when General Zia al-Haq takes power. And you were 19 when you led your first very significant march against Bhutto's death sentence. How do you think these different shifts in in politics have affected the way that you've understood human rights and the way that you have supported and defended human rights?
At that time, I was not aware of what I'm doing, whether it's a human rights or it's a rights or something. It was something like I was thinking it's not just. First at my home, when my mother was like a child producing machine. She was having like every day, every year almost having a baby girl, and we are 8 sisters. And my mother was always blamed bringing daughters, and our house was really tagged as a girls' home, and it is considered very bad if you don't have any boy at home. So I saw that inequalities at my home, and I saw my mother suffering, and at the same time my mother as a victim, and on the same time my mother as a leader also. She was the one, all that she was taking on herself, but she was helping other women also, battered women, domestic violence women. So they were taking refuge in our house. We had a big house. When, like these early Bhutto's regime, like 73 when he became prime minister, at that time, I was not very active. We knew that, but my father was not for. He was for democracy, but not for Bhutto. But I see him as a leader. But whenever he was speaking on the UN assemblies and everything, I was really at that time there was no television. It was only radio at that time in our city. So when it was April, when he was sentenced to death. I don't know what happened. My childhood, that when I saw my father on the streets, all of a sudden I went to college and I gathered all my girls and I said we should do something. It's wrong. Why he has to be hanged? He is doing such a wonderful job and he is elected. So even I was politically not that much aware, but I knew that the people love him. People don't like dictatorship, people love him. So I gathered all girls. I was popular leader in my college. Yeah, so
That's not surprising.
so I gathered these all students. It was almost 100 something, and we were, and this like there we. Our gatekeeper closed the door and big black gate with all these spikes on that needles, and that spike hurt. And but we were able to break that gate, and then we realized where to go, because we are protesting, but where to go? But there was a big office of commissioner. We went there to commissioner's office, but on the middle of that, police stopped us because it was martial law, nobody, and it was in the history of that city that many women, girls, in covered, uncovered, in burqas, in chadars, in all that, they are on the road. And police was not equipped because there was no women police at that time. So they pushed us back. So girls got afraid and we came home and with the bleeding chin. But after 4 hours, police was on our door. And they said, we have warrant to arrest her.
Because you were the leader.
I was the leader. And my mother was really, because in our culture, if police comes on your door, and it's a shame as already girls, that many girls in home. So my mother said, don't take her in police van, I'll bring her to office. And we went over there, and commissioner told my mother, and I was very strong. I said, I didn't do anything wrong. This Ziaul Haq is doing wrong. And he said, look at your daughter. She's not ashamed of that, what she has done. And she's repeating it. And my mother says she's child. And she said, she is not child. She has led these protests, which never happened in this city. And she has put my job at risk, and she has to. There are 2 choices. She has to go behind the bar, or she has to leave my territory, my city. So my mother said, okay, don't put her behind the bar. I will send her out. And in the wee hours of the next morning, like after a few hours, there was one of our distant uncle in his these wires truck. I was hiding in that truck and I left city. And my study was disturbed. I was not able to sit in the exam. So that was whole, and I left city, and I still remember my mother's pale face when she was begging to that officer, commissioner. But I felt bad for my mom, but I felt that what I'm doing good. I'm doing right. I don't know, nobody told me, no political party, nothing. It was from my inside. I started my activism from there.
So you spent, from what I understand, 2 years then
Yes.
with your uncle,
Yeah.
right? And in that time when you had, on some level you had won, and on
Yes.
some level you had lost,
Yes.
right? So how did you think about your intuition for justice at that moment?
At that time, these the 2 years was very, very hard. First, like my mother lost her mother at that time, and it was hard for me and to be close to family. But on the other side, I was thinking what to do next, and I was thinking like we have to stand up. And this, I think, it was the first in my city, and then all over Pakistan, these protests, and it started all over Pakistan. And that gave me really strength that I was not alone. I did something good. So that was where I thought I'm doing something good. And so that was like, on one hand, I was grieving, but on the other hand, I was thinking that I should not stop over here. I have to do more because we cannot sit home. Because I was thinking, what worse can come? Like they have already taken me to that level. So, but for, as you understand, it's not easy for a girl in Pakistani society and a family who are respected as a Sayyid family to the girl which is supposed to be at home, not to even go to school, and she's coming on road. So it was, on one hand, I lost personal, but on the other side, I gained strength also. By traveling 10 hours on that truck, it gave me strength also. And all these 10 hours, I was crying, I was thinking, and I was angry, and I was thinking that why should I? Then at one point I thought, why not to be, what is the life if I go back? It's better to be killed. And I was thinking this accident happened or something like that. But when I arrived in the city, Charsada, then I said, no, I have to move on with that.